So I've been on an absolute tear, destroying all the bosses and exploring everything Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC has to offer, and in my travels I've run across some pretty insane weapons and skills that are just amazing and unique or just outright different. So in this Elden Ring video, I'm going to be showing you where they are, how they look, including their weapon arts and special abilities, and just share with you some of my thoughts on some of the coolest weapons in the game. This should in theory give you some options on some of the more powerful weapons in the game, so that by the time you actually complete the game, you'll have a better idea of what exactly it is you want for your build. Just keep in mind I am late game and I am releasing this 3 days into the DLC, so this may be a bit on the spoilery side, so if you do want to avoid spoilers, do turn away now. And with that said, let's start off with the first weapon. So to start things off strong, we have Mesmer's weapons. Yeah, I know the DLC boss's weapon for starting is pretty insane, but honestly, Mesmer is not even that far into the game. He's about the midpoint from what I can tell, and his weapon is really cool. The weapon is called the Spear of the Impaler, and it is a strength, dex, faith weapon with primarily dex scaling. Like a lot of weapons in this DLC, this does have that split scaling that you come to expect, but this one comes with quite a few different options. First off, the spear has this really cool spear throw animation that does a little bit of what I think is fire damage, being that the spear is a fire based spear, and it does give you a range option, which is actually pretty unique for a melee weapon. On the other hand, for the weapon art, it uses Mesmer's Assault, which is a pretty insane looking skill that does quite a bit of AoE. I wouldn't personally use this for a boss or anything, but if I am casually exploring the world, just kind of attacking, this thing looks pretty good and it deals some decent damage. I am a massive fan of anything fire related. I build a lot of my builds towards fire based build, and if you are someone who is a dex faith build, then this weapon is going to be ideal for you and definitely worth picking up once you finally defeat Mesmer. Now in order to face Mesmer, this one's actually fairly easy. You just need to get to the Shadowkeep main gate and go through there. Once you finally make your way to the storehouse first floor, there's going to be a little passage that leads you through the entire castle. Now this would take quite a bit of time to explain the route and everything you need to do to get to him. Just know that this is the path that you need to go, and you need to face off against Mesmer, which is a fairly strong boss. Again, the hardest boss I've ever faced in Elden Ring, and so this should be very fun for you. Next we have Commander Gaius's weapon. This is a very late game boss weapon that is a thrusting heavy sword, which is really cool, which has a very unique ability on it. This weapon primarily is a dex strength weapon with a heavier emphasis on strength, so a dual scaling weapon, and this weapon is a very thrusting focused weapon. If you are a player who loves thrusting style weapons, this weapon could be a great option for you. It is a pure physical damage weapon, so it may not have as much versatility as other weapons, but it does come with a fairly unique skill, spinning gravity thrust. You jump up into the air and do a spinning thrusting kind of attack that kind of keeps you in the air for a second. It does multiple procs of damage, and it does some decent damage if you can position this really well. This isn't my necessarily go-to weapon since I am not necessarily a strength focused build, I'm more faith focused, but if you are a fan of strength dex weapons, this could be a great option for you, especially considering how cool the art is. Now Commander Gaius can be found at the Shadowkeep back gate. This is going to take you quite a while to get to. I'm pretty sure this is closer to the end of the DLC, and on the screen now I'll show you where you need to kind of go in order to get there. It's going to be a very brief explanation, by the way, but you're going to start at the Morth Ruins and jump down into the Morth Ruins. There's a little area you can jump down and kind of get you through, and once you jump down, you're just going to go through the Bonnie Village all the way through, just like how you see me drawing on the map now, and go all the way to the east side of the Shadowkeep. This is quite the trot. This is an insane journey, by the way, and then even more so, you need to scale the rest of the Shadowkeep and then go all the way through, and then you'll find a hidden path that'll lead you down. Again, I'm not trying to make this video about finding this because this would take me quite a while to break it down to you because it is a late game item, but at the end of the day, once you get to this and face off against him, I didn't necessarily find him to be that difficult of a fight, but he is really cool, but a very unique gravity focused enemy that you definitely should kill to get this weapon. Next we have the Death Knight's twin axes. I've recently made a video going over a lightning god build you definitely should check out, linked down in the description, and this is a very unique faith dex strength weapon, a tri-scaling weapon which has a very unique ability called Blink Bolt, which you will basically turn into a flash of lightning. If you hit into an opponent, you'll deal damage, and then you'll do a spinning attack that does a lot of damage if you do the hold attack. Now this weapon can be found in the Fog Rift Catacombs, not that far from the castle front side of Grace. It's a very short path that leads there, You can easily get access to it. The boss itself is relatively weak and he does do a grabbing attack, but overall it is a really cool weapon that you should consider. In the same vein, there is a great axe that functionally is about the same. It has a different animation, but essentially does the same thing as a blink bolt base ability. And it's called the Death Knight's Longshaft Axe. And this one is a very similar scaling, strength, dex, and faith, which is good in my opinion. That does a lightning based ability, very similar, having exactly the same input you need to do with the Death Knight twin axes. And this is going to be an alternative style if you don't like the twin axe style of gameplay. Starting from the Fog Rift Catacombs, you just need to make your way to the Temple Town Ruins. It's a short ride down the road, it's fairly easy to get to. You're basically going to just take the canal all the way up, passing the ravine north side of Grace, then to the Scorpion River Catacombs. Once inside, it is functionally about the same as the previous boss. I'm assuming are the same like race of people or something. And once you defeat the boss, you'll have access to this weapon, which in my opinion is a really cool weapon you should consider picking up if you do favor a bit more of an axe playstyle. Shifting gears here a little bit to a more colossal weapon, we have the Shadow Sunflower Blossom. This is a faith strength weapon with a little bit of dex scaling, but this is going to be primarily for those strength guys that love the big colossal weapons, but you do love a little bit of holy damage with it, as it does have some holy damage. Now this is a colossal strike weapon, so you're going to be doing some really heavy strikes with a sunflower, which is fairly unique and cool. And it does have this really cool weapon art called Shadow Sunflower Headbutt, which does a holy AoE slam, has pretty decent range and does some decent damage. And once again, if you are a fan of strength faith builds, then this is going to be a colossal weapon you could use if you can get over the fact that you're swinging with a giant sunflower. And once again, this one is found fairly late in the game at the Skidoo tree base. This is after you get to the church district entrance and drain the water in this area. This will open up another secret path to another zone. There's so many of them in this DLC I'm very shocked about, and this will lead you to this boss fight, which is a giant sunflower, which is kind of funny, but it's actually a pretty cool boss. A very quick honorable mention, since we're kind of gonna be in that area anyway, we have the Fire Knight Seal. It is a faith strength seal that is going to be used to buff Mesmer Flame incantations, and from what I can tell with the limited incantations that I have, they are very powerful and pretty good damage. There's really not much more to say about this one, that's why I'm quickly adding it in. Since you're already going to be going for the sunflower, you may as well grab this because it is within the same area where you drain the water. You're probably going to run across a few ultra rated tree spirits as well as another Fire Knight sorcerer guy, and he'll be guarding it basically, and you will find this seal there. If you're going to get the sunflower weapon, you may as well pick this up because it is going to be good for mesmer spells, and mesmer spells are really good. Speaking of spells, let's talk about Relanna's Twin Blades. This is a light greatsword, funny enough, that can be dual wielded to do some really awesome magic called Moon and Fire Stance, and it is a quad scaling weapon with a equal scaling across dex, int, strength, and faith, which is very unique in Elden Ring. If you do get to a higher level, obviously this weapon is going to do really well. It does do a bit of physical, it does a bit of magic, and it does a bit of fire. And then of course, seeing that it has a very unique weapon art, which you can light attack whenever you start to channel your ability, and you will do a magic version of the attack. And after channeling once again, if you heavy attack, you'll do the fire version, which I'm assuming scales separately, one from magic, one from faith, which kind of ties into the theme of quad scaling. This is a very cool weapon, and it is part of the coolest boss in my opinion in the game thus far, which can be found fairly easy. You can kind of almost beeline to this boss. It's going to be at the Castle Innis. You just need to get to the Castle Lore's chamber and face off against this boss. Again, this boss has got to be the coolest boss to have face off against in Elden Ring in a very long time, and she is responsible for the second most deaths of my playthrough so far. Now, I know I just said finally on the previous weapon, but there was another really cool weapon that I thought functioned pretty well, but it does use Scarlet Rot, so that's typically a fairly strong weapon, and it is called the Poleblade of the Bud, and this is a halberd. Now, the cool thing about this weapon, it is a tri-scaling weapon, scales off Arcane, Strength, and Dex, with a good split between Arcane and Dex, so if you're an Arcane Dex build, somehow, this weapon could work for you. And it again causes the Scarlet Rot buildup, which Scarlet Rot is actually fairly strong, especially for PvP. And considering the weapon art, Romana's Purification, this could be really good for PvP. It is a double sweeping attack that has really insane range, decent mobility, and if you aim this correctly, I'm sure you can hit opponents with it. it, but it has Scarlet Rot buildup as I said, so it is a really cool weapon with decently low requirements. In order to get this weapon, you need to face off against a fairly strong boss. I didn't think it was the strongest boss in the game, but it's going to be at the Church of the Bud. This is slightly after you get to the Raw Ancient Ruins East, and this is going to be a short journey basically to get to her. And she is a very unique boss because she does a lot of Scarlet Rot. Has really cool animations, really good visuals, and a boss that you definitely should pick up. And I think you need to actually face this boss in order to finish the base game. I'm not sure, actually I haven't finished it, it's 3 days in, but definitely something you should consider picking up because it is a really cool weapon that you could use for PvP because of that Scarlet Rot buildup. And there you have it guys, that is quite a few weapons, I don't recall how many I named in this video, that you should consider picking up because they're all fairly unique. They seem to have some form of use case, and I can definitely see myself or have been using some of them in my playthrough of Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. If this video gave you an idea of the weapons that you may want to consider using in the game, consider leaving me a like or even better subscribing to support the channel. Keep in mind it doesn't cost you anything to subscribe, and I am going to keep you up to date on all things Elden Ring. And just like that guys, I'll see you in the next Elden Ring video very soon.